I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
This episode is brought to you by TaxAct. Don't do your taxes alone. Join TaxAct's National Admin Night. Admin nights are social gatherings for getting through your to-do list. So get ready for a night of fun, finding deductions, and filing taxes with TaxAct, where you can file your federal and state return for just $49 through April 8. Let's get together and get them over with. Visit taxact.com/admin-night for details.
Kraft Mac and Cheese is better than 90s hip-hop. We'll remind you of your childhood without making you feel incredibly old. Kraft Mac and Cheese. Best thing ever.
I think a lot of people overlook Chile. I think Argentina people here have heard a lot more about, or it's much better at promoting itself, and that's Argentina all over. The Argentinians are very good at promoting themselves. The Chileans are not. People have heard about Peru and Machu Picchu. I guess people have gone to the Galapagos. I think people do hear about Patagonia. But what I love so much about Chile is that it's a place that doesn't realize quite how incredible it is.
That is today's guest, Steph Dyson. She is the author of Moon Chile with Patagonia and Rapa Nui. You can check it out at moontravelguides.com. You're going to hear the story behind how she went from a teaching career in England to moving to South America on a bit of a whim and eventually becoming an award-winning freelance travel journalist with an expertise in sustainability in Latin America. And today, you're going to get to explore this region of the world by visiting her list of 7 hidden gems, highlighting Chile's incredible geographic and cultural diversity, including a visit to indigenous communities maintaining centuries-old traditions, where to find remote wilderness in Chilean Patagonia, wine valleys, volcano summits, and much more, along with practical tips for travelers looking to hitchhike or road trip the iconic Carretera Austral. Plus, you're going to hear part 2 of our Best in Travel Tech series, an emphasis today on practical technology recommendations that can lead you to rich, real-world experiences, in-person connections, and new opportunities for meaningful cultural exchanges with locals. Yes, tech recs that can get you offline and can enhance your travels. All of that coming your way in this episode and much more. Buckle up, strap in. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey there, it's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging out, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire. No matter what your situation or experience, you know I love to talk destinations. I love a great destination episode. And I had some great adventures in Chile and Patagonia. During my time there many moons ago, I'll share a crazy story about my time there after the interview and the outro if you want to stick around for that. I'm just glad I survived. And I also want to share something in the outro that can be overlooked in the modern era. I thought about this as I was preparing to record and comment a bit on today's interview that you'll hear with Steph Dyson. And this is something that can lead you to, or perhaps has led you to, a completely different life path, something that maybe you are overdue, or maybe I am overdue to try out again. Stick around for that. And of course, don't forget, you're going to hear that Best in Travel Tech segment in this show as well, partway through the interview. Now, before we dive in, quick reminder, zerototravel.com/newsletter. You can sign up to join the community there. It's free. Newsletter goes out once a week. More travel goodies over there. And something very exciting. I was struggling with my cell phone use at home, and I wanted to develop something that could help me, something that was systematic, that I could use every day. And I did some beta testing, and I created the Being Box method. This is a brand new thing I am launching. It is a quality bamboo lockbox where you can lock your phone and unlock your life. And it comes with an 88-page premium journal with a simple 5-minute daily practice that you can use to reduce your screen time and literally enrich every aspect of your life. I find when I'm offline, everything's better. My sleep's better. I feel better. I go to bed at night and I don't feel like I've wasted a bunch of time. And if you're looking for an at-home system to reduce your screen time and help you out there, just go to the link in the show notes. It's beingbox.helpinghumansbeing.com, and you can reserve one for just $1. And I only have about 100 of them right now because I really want to work closely with the first set of customers and make sure everybody gets results and have a little bit of a community vibe going on. So if that sounds fun for you, don't delay and sign up over there and take back your time today. Okay, let's dive into today's show. By the way, this Moon guidebook, moontravelguides.com is where you can pick that up, or anywhere you buy your books. Thanks for listening. Please enjoy my conversation with Steph. Have fun on the journey, and I'll see you on the other side, my friend. Cheers.
This is King's Cross, St Pancras. Change here for Circle, Hammersmith City, Metropolitan, Northern and Piccadilly lines, national and international rail services.
Steph Dyson, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend. How you doing?
Very good, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to talk about the book, of course, Moon, Chile, with Patagonia and Rapa Nui. Am I pronouncing that
correctly? You are pronouncing that correctly, yeah.
Yes. I should have looked that up beforehand. AKA Easter Island. I'm excited to get into that because it's a part of the world that is near and dear to my heart, which we can talk about, and I know to yours. And before we get into some of the hidden gems you're going to share from the book and some travel advice on, I know you're a Latin America expert in terms of travel, so I definitely want to pick your brain on all that stuff. But I have to, of course, learn a little bit more about your journey from working in education in England and just moving to South America. I'm not sure if that was like I'm just going to buy a ticket and go type of situation, or, if there was like kind of a build up to that, and everybody's journey is so unique. So I'm just wondering if you could share a little bit more about, I guess, give us chronologically when that period of your life was, and just share a bit more about that period of your life, what it was like for you making that decision.
It was definitely a sort of just why not? Let's just see what happens decision.
Like a freak out, like I forget it. I'm going. I got to get out of here.
A little bit, yeah. It was. So I was teaching for 5 years in a school in the north west of England, and for anybody who's a teacher will know, or anybody who knows teachers, it's a really, really tough job. And as much as I loved working with the kids, I one day was basically offered a promotion, and I sort of thought about it, and I was like, if I take this promotion, this is going to be my life for the next 10, 20 years. And I'd had a friend who just moved to Madrid, and I was like, if she can do it, I definitely can move somewhere. And I really wanted to learn Spanish, and I was like, okay, well, South America is a great place to do that. Let's go travel for 2 years. And I was looking at some sort of volunteering website so that I could travel for free whilst also sort of learning Spanish. And I found this volunteering project in Bolivia. This was kind of July time that I found it, and I was like, right, let's do it. So I booked a flight in October to Bolivia. This is 2014, and flew out and ended up staying there for sort of close to a year. And then sort of it's been the last 10 years that I've really, or almost 11 years now, that I've been sort of in and out of Latin America. I mean, I lived in Peru for about 8 months. I lived in Chile for 3 years. I've lived in Colombia. And now I'm based back in the UK, but I've just come back from Chile and Brazil. And last year I spent sort of 4 months in Chile researching my guidebook. So yeah, it's now just become kind of my second home. And I'm just so glad that I kind of made that decision on a whim and was like, well, what's the worst that can happen? I'll just fly home,
So 2 years turned into 11, I guess.
Yeah, basically, yeah. The funny thing is, I was supposed to spend a year in South America. Then I was going to go to New Zealand and meet my parents there, and then do Asia. Still haven't made it to most of those places, so they're on the list.
Nice, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, you fall in love with a place, and sometimes that happens. I have a buddy who he was on the podcast actually. I remember he took off on like this round the world journey. And his first stop was New Zealand. And then he just stayed there for 2 years and he just never went on the rest of the trip. Like, all right, man.
Yeah, it totally happens. You have these great plans, but that's the fun thing about traveling, right? You kind of have an idea of where it's taking you. And then suddenly something else happens, like, fine, okay, well, I'll stay here for a bit. Why not?
Yeah. You can have the agenda and then be willing to throw it away kind of thing. That could go with the career thing as well. Like you talked about, getting the promotion and just having that gut feeling where it's like, if I take this is putting me on a certain track. I mean, that's always, for anybody listening, I think, that's a sign. Like you got to try to tune into that intuition and be like, yeah, okay. Like on the surface, a promotion's great, but is it always a great thing if you feel like it's not leading you where you're supposed to be going?
Yeah, totally. And I think particularly, I mean, I was 26 when I left teaching, and it sort of felt really momentous at that stage because like all of my friends, were on the career ladder. I was like, I didn't even know what I was going to do with my life. And it was very kind of serendipitous that I ended up in travel writing as it came. And I mean, I was very lucky with that. But like, I remember at the time looking at my friends who, like I said, they had, stability. They had these jobs that were sort of improving and they were going up the career ladder. They were starting to get mortgages. They had savings and pension plans. And I was, living in Latin America, kind of just trying to work out what the hell I was going to do with my life. And that was really tough, like watching that. But ultimately, I regret absolutely zero decisions. And if I'd have done 2 years of traveling and come back to the UK and gone into another job, I still wouldn't have regretted it at all. I think travel is such a formative experience that, that you can never regret making the decision to go and travel somewhere.
Yeah, no, I feel that that's something I hung on to as well when I was going through. I had a similar sort of experience with, yes, you're kind of like you're doing the travel thing and you're loving it, but then you see your friends progressing up the quote unquote ladder of life, I guess you could call, just like doing the things you're supposed to do. And you're thinking, oh I'm like falling behind over here. It's easy for that peer pressure to kind of, it's not even from them. It's just from society, like trying to seep in kind of like, am I supposed to be, is it okay to just like be living these years and having fun? It's like, hell yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. And I think as well, like all of my friends now say they live vicariously through my life, because like, some of them want to travel loads and they can't because they've got sort of kids or just their jobs don't allow it. And I think, the travel lifestyle and particularly the way I've done it, where, I lived abroad for very long periods, like that's not for everybody. Yeah, it's quite nice to sort of, I think I still inspire them to go and see some fun things when they do have time to go away and travel.
Was it helpful that in England, I do feel like there is a culture around like gap year and people understand that people may take a year or two to travel, whereas in the States, that wasn't really a thing for us growing up, at least when I grew up. And I don't think it really is even now. Do you think having that sort of underlying cultural support helped a bit for the initial decision?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I think for most people, the kind of gap year is sort of Southeast Asia because it's very cheap. It's very accessible because of the language as well. Like a lot of people speak English. I think South America, and I still get this now, is people are just like, well, it's really dangerous. Why would you go there? People sort of understood it. And I guess mine was more of a career break than necessarily like a gap year. So people, like my parents were a bit like, what are you doing? But they kind of came around to it. But yeah, I do think we have a bit more of that kind of sort of cultural acceptance. And we also we had until Brexit, a scheme called Erasmus, which meant that you could spend a year studying abroad doing your degree. So I actually spent sort of 4 months in Switzerland whilst I was at university. And like, so I do think there is a bit more, like you said, a bit more kind of cultural acceptance of it. But I do think South America, like one of my friends actually, when I told her I was going to move to Bolivia, she said, "Oh, I'll come and visit you at weekends." I said, do you think I'm talking about Bulgaria? And she was like, "Oh," and I was like, "Yeah, you're not coming to visit Bolivia at weekends." So it was even people didn't know where Bolivia was, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned like one of the common things you hear is that people think that like it's easy to generalize an entire continent, by the way. We should never do that. Yeah, the danger element. Do you want to just kind of address that right up front? I think this will help up for the destination portion of this conversation.
Yeah, definitely. My approach to it is always there are dangerous parts of every single country, every single city you go to. Like there's parts of London that you shouldn't be going to, or you're going to feel unsafe visiting. I do think South America and Latin America in general, there are places where, you have kind of, particularly in Colombia right now, there's been an increase in terms of the kind of drugs violence. And there was just a presidential candidate who was shot and killed. I think it was last week. There are parts of every country where there are issues, but there are also parts of every single country that are absolutely safe for tourists. And a lot of these things, particularly if we're talking about Colombia, like I lived in Colombia for a couple of months prior to the pandemic and then unfortunately had to come back to the UK. The likelihood of you as a tourist getting involved in those things is slim. I know travelers who go to Colombia to go and like hunt down cocaine and take drugs. And if you're doing risky behavior, then there's much more likelihood that you're going to get involved in that. But the general tourist or traveler, like for example, in Chile, I often get asked if Patagonia is a safe place. And in Patagonia is kind of the bottom half of Chile and the bottom half of Argentina. And it's probably, I always say, one of the safest places on the planet. Because you're looking at these little rural towns. These are people who look out for each other. They look out for the tourists as well. Like they know everybody. If somebody does something, everybody's going to know who it was, But I think so many of these places as well, they're so keen to have travelers. They understand that it is a really important source of income for them. So security for travelers is something that they want to maintain. And I will also say as well, I now speak fluent Spanish. I didn't when I moved to Bolivia, but I enrolled in classes. I was doing sort of 2 hours a day for about 3 months. Having some language skills helps enormously because not only does it offer that kind of like cultural sort of exchange element of it that you don't necessarily get if you just can't speak any of the local language. And there are lots of parts of Latin America where there's very little English spoken. But I've also found that when I lived in Bolivia, for example, and I visited one of the main markets in the capital, so not the capital, but in La Paz. And one of the ladies in the market was just like, just be really careful, keep an eye on your belongings, like people do pickpocket here. And I wouldn't have understood what she said if I didn't speak any Spanish. So I do think it is valuable if you have any interest in spending time in South America or visiting on a number of occasions, just doing some basic Spanish is really going to make you feel safer and increase the experience in general.
I think the media narratives is what drives a lot of that. When people think about traveling in Europe, they tend to think of getting pickpocketed and things like that. And they think about South America and they jump immediately to like getting kidnapped or beheaded or something extreme, which you have the occasional rare cases and that's what gets run through the media. But like you said, the typical traveler isn't going to experience something.
I agree. And I like you said, it is completely a media construct. And I really hate it when, I had this random conversation. I was in a B&B in another part of England the other day. And I mentioned that I was there for a trade conference about Latin America. And I mentioned that. And the guy was like, "Oh, you should never go to Latin America." And it just makes me feel so sad that people have that perspective. Because I think fundamentally, and you experience this absolutely everywhere you travel, regardless of which country it is. And I wish more people would understand this because I think this would do a lot to sort of quell the sort of rising xenophobia and racism that we experience around the world and in our respective countries. But every time you go and visit somebody in a new country or go to a community, see a family or whatever, every single person you meet will fundamentally have the same kind of hopes and dreams for their life. And that is safety for themselves and their children, security in terms of kind of money and in terms of food. And they will, if you kind of give them the time and sort of have that chance to kind of speak with them or just be kind to each other, then you'll just see that fundamentally you are almost identical to that person. The only thing that is different is where you were born.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin. Saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Now, back to the show. I imagine you're keeping a lot of these things in mind as you're writing a guidebook as somebody who's not a native of that country or indigenous to that country. How do you balance that as a writer?
I think obviously as a writer, I'm kind of the conduit between the traveler and the country. And my job is to be as kind of fair and just in my representation of that country, but also my sort of main kind of thing is also to make it kind of a safe destination for people to travel or give them the information that they need to do. I've written this guidebook to Chile. I was working on a Lonely Planet guidebook last year for Peru as well. And I typically work on guidebooks about destinations that I know incredibly well. That gives me those insights, particularly having lived in them or kind of spent a lot of time traveling in them, that really help with the way I present somewhere. We have in travel journalism, we have something called parachute journalism, which is where you kind of just arrive in a country, spend a couple of days there, make some kind of like assumptions based upon that visit, and then leave again. And some people make better assumptions than others. But I do think, particularly when it comes to guidebooks, and also I've got a website called worldlyadventure.com, and that's all about South American travel. I do think there's such an important role for people who have spent significant time, who know people who spend a lot of time having conversations with those people, and they can give you a much more accurate portrayal than I think a lot of people, even other kind of content creators or Instagrammers and sort of influencers. I don't have any issue with the work they're doing, but I think sometimes they can create these judgments of a place very quickly, and those might not be as representative of the place as somebody who knows it a bit better.
You got to get below the surface, right? It's interesting, because you're bringing the foreign perspective, so you're noticing things in a different way, perhaps. But then, living in local neighborhoods and spending time there, you also get to ingratiate yourself into those communities and get a better understanding and kind of tie all that stuff together. I love guidebooks. I'm still a fan of guidebooks. Yeah, I know people don't always use them anymore, but I think they're great. They're a great way to commit to a trip. I think it's like a low stakes kind of commitment where you're like, hey, I'm going to spend, a small amount of money to get something that's going to really fire me up and get my trip planning going and give me a background on the culture and the history and things like that in one place. And I think it's cool and tough trick to pull off as the author. So congrats. I want to dive into this list you have, but let's talk about the people of South America and Latin America. It's just such wonderful souls. Met so many incredible, passionate people. Yeah, just talk about the people that we might meet.
Yeah, you're right. Like Latin America is particularly known for the kind of passion and sort of the people you meet. And I think even in, so for example, Colombia is known for like everybody's being so incredibly friendly, and they are. I wrote this piece about Pablo Escobar in Medellin and like the impact that had on the kind of country and the city in particular. And I said, why is everybody still so friendly? I was like, how are you, after like you went through kind of a couple of decades of just being so scared that if you stepped out of your house, you're going to be killed. And they were like, well, like we never knew if tomorrow was going to happen. So we had to live life to the kind of fullest. And that was just such a beautiful and like profound way of putting it. And that kind of undercuts, like, I guess if you live in a country, where it's had a really challenging history, then you do that. But I think in other places, like in Chile, one of the reasons I think I spent so long in Chile was because they really remind me of British people. They do say that Chile is like the Brits of South America because you've got the kind of Andes. They kind of is cut off from the rest of them. You've got the Andes mountains, you've got a desert in the north, and then you've got ocean around the rest of it. So they see themselves as kind of culturally distinct from the rest of South America. And they have the driest sense of humor. Like they're so self-deprecating. It's just very, very funny. And I think I spend a lot of time with guides in Chile, and you always can have a really good laugh with them because they just kind of have the same sense of humor. And then, for example, in Peru, when I was working with Lonely Planet last year, I went to the north of Peru, which is not somewhere that a lot of people go to, but it's absolutely stunning. You've got Gocta waterfalls, which are one of the highest waterfalls in the world. You've got these incredible archaeological sites that are older than Machu Picchu and have nobody there. And again, I sort of was there, and you get a chance. Like I was on a bus one day, and this guy came and sat next to me and very enthusiastically wanted to talk to me because he just, I was obviously foreign, so he wanted to have a chat. And then I sort of met these other people, like other local people in all these other different places, and everybody was just so excited to see a foreigner. They were so proud of their country, but they didn't really. I think a lot of these places they don't realize that foreign people are going to be interested in it. So when you turn up and they're a bit like, oh, what are you doing here? And you're like, well, this is such a beautiful place. Like, why would I not be here? And people are just so warm and inviting. And I even got one time when I was living in, it was a couple of years ago when I was working on another guidebook, and I was in this like random little town in Peru that nobody really goes to. I was purely just there to update the guidebook. And there was this big kind of parade going on in the main square because it was like a religious holiday. And I was just there, taking some photos. And this guy, who must have been about like 17, saw me and kind of beckoned for me to come over. And I was like, oh God, this is my worst nightmare. Like I do find it a bit kind of intimidating being such an obvious like gringa, as they call me, like a foreign woman. So I was just like, oh God, I don't want everybody to be staring at me. But he forced me to he kept beckoning. So I went over and they were like, we want you to dance with us in this parade. And I ended up with them. They were dressed in this incredible kind of indigenous kind of clothing that's always used for these religious celebrations. And I ended up dancing with them around the square. And, after a couple of minutes, I stopped caring that everybody would be staring at me because there's this random kind of foreign woman there. And it was just so wonderful. And they were so kind of welcoming and just really, really keen to show me their culture. And I do think that is an experience you get anywhere in South America. They just want to show you their culture and for you just to enjoy yourself.
Those are always wonderful moments when you go from being sort of like the traveling observer to part of the fabric of whatever's going on. And you're just like, all right, now I'm in it. This is, I got somebody taking me by the hand, showing me around. I feel like that's that level of friendliness is always so appreciated when you're out on the road and you have that desire. You want to be like a part of it somehow, but you don't really know. Sometimes it takes a nice kind local stranger to just pull you in and, create like a lifelong memory.
Yeah.
Really.
And I do think as well, like I said, I always stand out like a sore thumb, and I'm always sort of traveling on my own. So I can often feel a bit intimidated by those interactions. I think that's like a lot of us do, right? Like it can be quite hard to feel like to strike up those conversations with local people. But like without fail, every time I've just had such an interesting conversation about that person, their life, their town, their country. Like if you can just, like a lot of time if you're waiting for buses in South America, because buses, you never know when a bus is going to turn up. There aren't any times. You just sit by the side of the road and hope something passes, right? And so many times, like I've been doing that. There was a boat I was waiting for, and I had some beers with these old men by the port. Like just sit down and strike up a conversation, and you will always have a fascinating kind of interaction with the people you meet.
Did you hitchhike the Carretera Austral? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, you are. Yes, I hitchhiked some of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk about the importance of that route, what it is? And I just want to hear about your experience. Because when I was in Patagonia and sort of like dipping in and out of those areas, I did meet some people that were either biking it or hitchhiking it or something like that. I was like, wow, that's really cool. That's something I'd like to do someday. And I just wanted to hear about your experience with that.
Yeah, this was going to be on my list of hidden gems as well. So this is good.
Okay, well, should we dive in then? Since we're here?
Okay.
All right. I mean, do you have these prioritized in a certain order of preference, or is it just sort of a collection of?
This was top of the list. So yes.
Okay.
So
wait,
that was.
Oh no! Did I skip to the number one? I didn't ruin this podcast for everybody, did I? No.
Sorry, guys. Anyway, well, so the Carretera Austral is
Let's
also
kick
known.
It off there. Yeah.
Let's kick it off. Yeah, there was a good segue, even if we've kind of flipped the thing. So this is one of my favorite parts of Patagonia because it's increasingly getting known, but it's not as well known as Torres del Paine, sort of in the south. And it's basically this road that connects kind of the top of Patagonia, Chilean Patagonia. It's where kind of Chile gets skinny. So Chile's pretty skinny anyway, but it's kind of fatter. And then when it starts getting skinny, that's Patagonia, and that's where this road is. And it basically, like some of the road was only constructed in like the 90s. Like previously, these people were connected by boat or connected by like really tiny little airstrips. And it's just a really different perspective on Patagonia because you sort of in the south, you've got a lot of mountains and a lot of glaciers, and it's kind of like and pampa as well, so kind of steppe. Whereas on this, it's all green, and you've got these beautiful national parks with lots of different trees and wildlife. And it's also got quite a kind of unique culture as well, because everybody's just been separated from the rest of Chile for sort of pretty much the entire time. It's great for sort of a road trip as well. Like a lot of people visited in about 14 days. But hitchhiking, I always recommend hitchhiking if you've not got kind of a determined trip length. Because like I said, with buses, the buses are so unreliable. Like I try and keep on top of the bus schedules for my website, and it's impossible because they change weekly. I don't know why, but they just decide completely different days. And you're sort of a couple of hours between each of the different kind of towns and everything, and the different national parks. And you sort of, if you're going to sit around waiting for those, you could be waiting for a long time. So it's become a thing that a lot of people will hitchhike. And you basically will either get picked up by other foreigners. I do trip planning, so I help people plan their trips to Chile and Patagonia. And I had a guy who was I think he was in his 70s or sort of early 80s. He drove the Carretera Austral, and basically he was just picking up hikers because it was just him in the car. He wanted some company. When he was dropping them at the places they wanted to go to, he'd buy them lunch and then continue on his way. And he had a great time. But you'll also often get picked up by local people as well. So when I did it, we basically got picked up. I think, it was by like this guy. We were in the back of his truck, sort of in the boot of it, like the open boot, which is pretty standard when you're hitching in South America. And then we swapped into sort of it was a lorry, and we were kind of in the cab with the lorry driver. And again, we just had some sort of conversations with him. And it's just a great way, I think, to to learn about the region as well, because they will, I think part of hitchhiking as well, kind of part of the almost like the contract is you make conversation, right? You don't just turn up and sit there and just, say goodbye when you get out. You have a conversation with this person because they're kind enough to stop and give you a lift. It was just really fascinating hearing about people who live in such a remote place. Like, it is exceptionally remote here. And that's part of the beauty, along with the like incredible like marble caves and glaciers and hiking and everything like that. But I would highly recommend people hitchhiking, or like I said, you can do the buses or you can hire a car and visit it. But like, it's pretty much one of my favorite parts of Chile.
Wow. I like the idea of flipping it too. Like, if you're somebody listening that's solo, you could rent a car and then just pick people up. You could flip it the other way around. Do you recommend, if you're going to hitchhike that route, did you have a partner like that? And then also, did you carry a tent? Like, when it comes time to, because it's a very long road, so you could be hitchhiking for, I don't know how many days or whatever, depending on how far you're getting with each ride. Yeah. Do people carry tents? Do they just ask to be dropped off as towns along the way and just find a place to stay? Like, how would you sort of top line advice and how you would tackle that?
Sure. Yeah. So I was hitchhiking with a friend. So there were two of us. And typically you don't want more than sort of two or three people, because then it's hard getting a ride. I think you can do it on your own. Like I said, Patagonia is incredibly safe. I don't think you'll have any issues if you're doing it solo. And as with any hitchhiking, if you don't feel safe, you ask them to drop you off and you kind of get another ride. There can be quite a lot of competition for rides these days, particularly if you're traveling in kind of January and February, which is peak season. So my recommendation is probably late November, December, sort of late February and March would probably be the seasons when I would say it's easier to get a ride. And outside of those, it can be quite hard because there's snow and everything. In terms of kind of, we had a tent, but realistically, whilst there are some, like a lot of people who have kind of farms sort of between the towns and stuff, a lot of the rides will be going to the next town. So you can just do it and wait to get a lift that's going to take you to somewhere that's got accommodation. And even these are sort of towns and villages, there's plenty of accommodation there. But I think as well, like, you can wild camp in a lot of parts of Patagonia, and that can be really beautiful. And a lot of the national parks as well have campsites. So actually bringing a tent can sort of enhance that experience, because you get to camp. Like, honestly, this road is so beautiful. When you're driving it, you just want to stop and take photos like every few minutes. So having that option to stop, camp, and just enjoy where you're based is something I would recommend as well.
Awesome. Okay. What else do you have for us?
Would you like the second on the list, or are we starting at the bottom?
Let's go to the bottom, and then we'll kind of work our way back to the
next
to the number one, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
we'll start at 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I love about Chile, and I think people generally associate this with Argentina, is the wine. Now, I consider myself a bit of an expert on this because I drank more wine than you can possibly imagine whilst I lived in Chile. And it was fantastic.
You earned your stripes.
I did. And I visited probably about 80% of the kind of visitable
in the name
vineyards.
Of research, Steph.
In the name of research. Came away with a lot of wine in the trunk of my car, and it was fantastic. Now, what I love about Chilean vineyards is that a lot of them have kind of hotels, or some of them have kind of like sort of glamping and sort of camping areas attached to them. And some of the other ones are accessible just from towns that have kind of got B&Bs and hostels and things like that. But the wine is fantastic. My biggest recommendation for people who like red wine is the Colchagua Wine Valley. This is where you can get kind of Chile's signature grape, which is known as Carmenere. And it's actually a grape that was from France, but they thought it died out and then realized it was in Chile in the 90s. Like some guy, I've actually met the guy who tested it and realized it was a different varietal because they thought it was Merlot and actually it was Carmenere. And it's like this spicy kind of peppery red wine. And there's some great restaurants. There's a place called Monty's, which is one of the main vineyards in the area. And they also have this incredible steak restaurant run by this Argentine chef, Francis Mullman. It's all kind of like open grill. You're in the middle of the vineyards. You're drinking red wine. And it's just absolutely outstanding. And I do think I think it's a great opportunity to just go and visit some vineyards. You've also got some that are closer to Santiago as well, Casablanca, which is the white wine valley. And I do think there's nothing better than spending a couple of days just enjoying really good wine, surrounded by some vineyards.
Yeah, it sounds like the picture you're painting of that vibe sounds really pleasant.
Yeah.
Welcome to part 2 of our special 3-part mini-series, Best in Travel Tech, where I share recommendations that can enhance your trip, perhaps save you time and money, and connect you with locals, or just maybe make your life a little bit easier. In this particular segment, I want to focus on the apps and the digital tools, the technology that can foster social connection and help to facilitate memorable cultural exchanges. Before we dive in, I think that it is important to note some of these you may not have heard of, some of them you certainly have heard of. But my intention here is to, yes, give you some new tools to work with out on the road, but also to try something new, to use some of these suggestions, some of these tactics I share today. You can even do that in your hometown or next time you're on a trip. And just try it out if it's something you've been curious about and have never done before. So hopefully that piques your interest. But before we get into today's travel tech recommendations, you all know that in order to get access to any of your technology on the road, you need data and you need reliable internet. That's why my number one no-brainer travel tech recommendation is also who is bringing you this segment. It's Olafly. It's a game changer. What do you need the most when you arrive somewhere new outside of money and your passport? You need reliable internet. You need data, of course. And if you want the absolute easiest and best solution for travelers, just get an eSIM card from Olafly. It's so easy. An eSIM is a digital version of a physical SIM card. It's already integrated in your device. Now, they offer a variety of eSIM products, but Olafly Plans is brand new. It's a monthly global eSIM subscription that allows you to stay connected in over 160 countries with just one eSIM installation, and it eliminates the need for SIM swaps or worrying about running out of data, depending on the plan you choose. No more hunting around for Wi-Fi, no more scrambling for a local SIM card or wondering if you actually got a good deal, no more worrying about insane roaming charges, no more hassle. Just fast and reliable internet and data as soon as you arrive. The folks at Olafly have been kind enough to give a discount to you as a listener of this podcast. I'll put this in the show notes as well so you have the links, but you just got to go to esim.olafly.com/plans and you just pick from one of two plans. You can choose monthly. You get a 10% discount with the code 0totravel, or annual, which includes a built-in 22% discount plus an extra 10% with that promo code 0totravel. That's 0totravel, all caps, all one word. You'll have one simple plan, one eSIM, and total freedom to stay connected in 160 plus countries by getting an eSIM plan from Olafly. Thanks to Olafly for supporting this segment. Now, my first recommendation, I have had the founder of this application, this community. I hesitate to call it an application because it is a community. World Packers. I'm not sure if you've ever used World Packers, but I had Ricardo Lima on the podcast, and they say on their website they are, quote, the safest community for travel and volunteering, connect with millions of conscientious travelers and welcoming hosts around the world, and have transformative experiences. So this is one of those apps that really does feel community driven, the intention of using your phone as a tool rather than a distraction. That's what today's segment is all about, getting you connected with people. So just browsing their website here, they've got places that you can volunteer, like from farms to eco-villages, permaculture projects, nonprofit schools, holistic centers, and so on. Looks like they've had 181,000 plus confirmed travelers around the world. So I thought I'd get that on your radar in case that's helpful for you. There is a fee to join, and you can check it out and decide if it's for you, if that sounds like something that gets you excited. Now, I'm going to share some free resources as well in this segment, so don't tune out just yet. Next up, this one is something that has come up time and again on this podcast, and that's workaway.info. And they call themselves the largest and safest community for cultural exchange, working holidays, and volunteering in 170 countries. So again, another platform that can facilitate real-world connections for travelers. And I've never used it myself, but I have heard from many guests who have used Workaway as a way to supplement their travels, not just with say free accommodations in exchange for a work exchange, but also supplement it with some different types of experiences than you have when you're just, going into a city to explore for the day and doing the sort of typical tourist stuff, which is really cool. But this gives you another option for longer term travelers, probably geared more towards them. But I thought I would get that on your radar. And then the one I mentioned, that Janessa, our partnerships manager, she's been a digital nomad for some years now. And I put this in our group chat to the team. I said, hey, what are some technologies that you guys are using right now? And I just wanted to crowdsource some of this. And she mentioned Pangea, which is a travel social app for keeping track of where in the world your friends are and connecting with other travelers. And it's a growing database of travel recommendations as well. So I can link up to those in the show notes, but I thought I would throw those your way just because they're 3 tech tools that, yes, they are technology companies in many ways, but they're really working on fostering those in-person connections, those cultural exchanges that we really value. And as I mentioned at the top of the segment, don't be put off if you're not traveling. Perhaps you want to just get curious about some of these apps I just mentioned or some other ones and have a bit of a travel experience at home. We sometimes miss being out on the road. We can't always find the time or the money to travel, but you could do something like this if you can find an experience near you and have a bit of an experience that way. So I just want to kind of throw that out there as an idea. Now, I've got 2 more recommendations for you to perhaps spice up some of your future travels. And maybe these are things that you've tried before, perhaps not. Now, say what you want about Facebook and Meta. I'm not necessarily a super fan either. I definitely don't blame you if you're not. So I want to share an alternative option for those of you that aren't fans in a moment. But I will say that Facebook groups can be very useful in terms of being a tool for travelers. And if you just search out groups with shared interests, you can connect with locals even before you arrive. These are some stories I've heard through interviews over the past years where people have leveraged Facebook groups to make these real world connections in a really authentic way. They're interested in something specific. Let's say salsa dancing in France. I did this one for fun. So let's say you're into salsa dancing, and I just searched salsa dancing in Paris, and bam, found a group. It's called Salsa Group in Paris, 5,000 plus members. It lists all of the salsa events in Paris and getting you connected with exciting salsa evenings, quote unquote. So there you go. Somebody's traveling to Paris and they want to find the salsa community there, and you already are interested in that. You already sort of know salsa. You kind of know what the community is about. You get to experience that community in a different city. You get to connect with other people that have a shared interest, and who knows where something like that will lead. And I've heard this time and again where somebody will go to a local, they'll try stand-up or an open mic or something like that because that's a scene they're interested in. You schedule something like that, or you just plan on something like that in your first night or two in a town, that could really open things up in terms of who you connect it with and what the rest of your experience might look like, because there is probably a good chance you'll meet some cool local people and maybe they'll either take you on a whirlwind adventure around their city, or at the very least give you some recommendations for some things to check out that are hyper local. So I also found one in Berlin, the Language Tandem Berlin. This has almost 60,000 members. It's a group for people that would like to meet in order to help each other to learn a language or just gather to have fun. So you have these types of groups out there, and you can find these through Facebook groups. If you want to try that, if you've never tried that, I'd be curious to hear how that goes for you. And I have definitely connected with people through a group. In fact, I did a hitchhiking trip around Scotland many moons ago, and it was through a Facebook group that I got connected with this community, and we all decided to do this hitchhiking race around Scotland. The organizer was the guy that founded the Facebook group, and it was a very grassroots thing. It didn't cost money. We decided to do a charity thing around it just for fun, and ended up hitchhiking around Scotland and camping out and meeting 22 awesome people from around the world. And so it works. I know from personal experience, it's something that you can do, and it can be a really cool thing. Now, lastly, for those of you that don't vibe with the Facebook group thing, meetup.com. It's old school. I mean, it still works. It's still classic. You can just go to meetup.com. You can search any city and just find out what types of meetups are going on. I'm looking in Oslo right now where I live. I mean, you have a tech career meetup. You have things like that, but you also have all kinds of, language learning things, and you can search by hobbies and passions and sports and fitness. If you want to do a group run with a group, travel and outdoor, it could be a cool thing. I imagine somebody traveling to Oslo, and perhaps instead of hiring a local guide or something, maybe they just connect with a travel and outdoor group and do some random hike near the city that group's doing that week. It's just a cool way to connect with people. So I just wanted to bring some of this up in this particular edition of this Best in Travel Tech segment to kind of close it out, to challenge you to perhaps try this as a method to connect with locals if you've never done it before, or at the very least, just keep this in mind for some upcoming trips or a way to, let's say, travel when you're not on the road. So there you go. Strong focus here on fostering cultural exchanges, real-world connections, using that technology as a tool rather than a distraction, which I'm a super fan of. Thank you once again for listening to this edition of Best in Travel Tech. We have one more coming for you next month, so be on the lookout for that. And I do want to close it out with thanking Olafly one more time. Go to esim.olafly.com/plans and pick from one of those two plans, either monthly or annual. With the brand new Olafly plans, you can stay connected in over 160 countries with just one eSIM installation. Don't forget to use that promo code ZERO2TRAVEL to get your discount. Thanks for listening.
Shall I move on to number 2 or number
Let's
6? Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a place that I've been to quite recently. I was there a couple of weeks ago. It's a place called Pucón, which is in the kind of lakes region of Chile. They claim that they're the adventure capital of Chile, which is obviously debated by many other parts of Chile. But they are basically the lakes region, as you can imagine. There's a lot of water, a lot of lakes. It's got a lot of mountains. It's got a lot of volcanoes. And Pucón is known for the Villarrica volcano, which you can actually summit. There's often snow at the top. There's often, you can look in the crater, and there's often lava as well. It's pretty much the most active volcano in Chile. So often it is closed. I think there's an orange alert on it at the moment. But basically you climb up, and it's kind of accessible climbing. It's, you are using an ice axe, but you don't need to have ice climbing experience. And on the way down, you get to basically stick a tea trolley, or I guess it's like a little toboggan, on your bum, and you slide down as far as you can on your bum to get back down the volcano, which was really good fun. The only problem is that it is now very busy with visitors. And when I did it, it was like a chain of people going up the mountain, which is not the way that I like to visit places. Now, again, you can mitigate that by heading out of season. So again, sort of November, kind of November, March, April time is the time that I would recommend for that. But there's also other volcanoes in the area that you can hike up with sort of tour companies. There's also some absolutely beautiful national parks, one called Chiloé, which basically you can see, I think it was like eight volcanoes from the top of this hill. You also get to see the Araucaria trees, which are these monkey puzzle trees, they're basically as old as dinosaurs. And they filmed, I think it was like a British program, Walking with Dinosaurs. They actually filmed it around these trees because it just looks like, millions of years ago. And they've also got some incredible hot springs as well. So you can kind of do some hiking in the day and then just go and chill out or warm up, I guess, in the hot springs and just kind of relax. So it's kind of the perfect adventure destination, I think. And it's just green and beautiful, and just, a really wonderful place to go.
Amazing. Yeah, I have a good idiot tourist shot. I climbed the Villarrica like 20 years ago, and I took a picture right next to the crater with the lava. So dumb. I mean, it could just splash right out on me, right? Like, I mean, Probably not. It felt relatively safe, but it's a volcano. You never know. So, that's one of my proud idiot tourist shots, I would say.
It's a good way to go, I guess, if you kind of, why not?
It's so tempting. This is like, this is pre-iPhones and stuff. There wasn't anywhere. It was just for myself, but, don't take your picture next to the lava. I don't want anybody getting burned up. But no, it is a wonderful experience. I'm bringing that up just to kind of support your inclusion of this on the list because, again, I don't think it was like a queue like that getting up, but I remember it was a decent amount of people. It was a popular thing to do. But so cool to see inside a volcano. Like, it's just not something you get to do every day.
No. And I will say as well, after we talked about the Carretera Austral, like often I do say, around Pucón, there's a lot of volcanoes you can go up with increasing levels of difficulty. And they're more expensive than going up Villarrica because you're probably organizing a private tour. But if you just want to have the kudos of going up a volcano, and also you don't want to climb for like hours, because it's a steep climb up Villarrica. At the very top of the Carretera Austral, there's a national park called Pumalin National Park. It's really beautiful, it's the Valdivian temperate rainforest, which is this really unique kind of ecosystem in Chile. And basically there was a volcano that erupted, I think it was about 15 years ago now. And they didn't know it was a volcano. People did die in it. It's pretty awful history, and you can kind of go and see the kind of ash flows and stuff in the local town. But basically you can climb up the side of this volcano and see this absolutely enormous crater. Like, it is remarkable, and it's still steaming. And I've got some drone shots, which I think really did give you a sense of kind of the scale of it. But you just are on the lip of this crater, and you can't see the lava or anything. But if you want to feel small, go to that volcano. Because it just was and again, it's that kind of sense of like, this is crazy. Like, if it explodes, I'm dead instantly, and that sort of real sense of kind of might of nature and everything that we just can't control.
Yeah. And that park, I was wondering if you were going to mention that park, because it's, I mean, again, I was there a while ago, but I think it was the first year it was opened. I remember we camped in there New Year's Eve, and it was like, I was with my girlfriend at the time, and then there was like one other couple there. There was like 4 of us in this park, but it was, again, a pretty brand new area, a bit out there. I don't know. Is it like a crowded area now, or is it a popular park to visit?
So I think sort of the whole Carretera Austral, because you've got Pumalin National Park, which is exceptional. Don't know if you went to Cerro Castillo National Park as well, which is kind of described as kind of the new Torres del Paine, because it looks like a kind of castle. And then you've got Patagonia National Park. So Pumalin and Patagonia National Park were both the Tompkins National Park. So sort of now the late founder of North Base, who actually died on the lake quite close to this, where he was kayaking. They were their kind of parks, and they've got incredible infrastructure because they knew what they were doing. They've got brilliant hiking trails. I think Pumalin gets more visitors than the parks further south. Patagonia National Park's one of my absolute favorites because it's this massive valley. There's a lot of pumas. You can see rhea. You can see sort of huemules, which are sort of a huemul deer, which is one of the, like, there's fewer huemul deers than there are pandas. And I've seen them a couple of times. I'm very lucky. But the whole area, like, these are outstanding national parks. And yeah, the further south you get, typically there are fewer people. But Cerro Castillo as well, it's got a 4-day hiking trail that doesn't get a huge number of hikers. But again, I would say kind of you want to be there sort of November, March, April time if you really want to avoid the crowds and feel like you're getting these places to yourself as much as possible.
Cerro Castillo sounds like a wonderful place to visit. Have you met Chris Tompkins? I've been trying to get her on the podcast.
I haven't, but I do know people from Rewilding Chile, so I can see if I can put a good word in for you.
Okay, yeah. Just again, it's just people listening. She's a conservationist who, together with her husband, they were able to preserve a lot of land in Patagonia. It's very inspiring, the work that they've done to also overcome some of the local skepticism too. Like, are these people really getting all this land to give back? Why would they do? Some of the I've learned a little bit about their journey, and some of these parks, exist because of their efforts, which conservation efforts, which is really cool.
It was the biggest donation of land from a private entity to a state in the history of the world, which is pretty remarkable.
There you go. That's why Steph is the writer, because she can just sum it all up in a beautiful sentence, and I will just ramble. We'll get back to the interview in just a moment.
This episode is brought to you by Fandango. People say fans are too distracted these days, but the truth is, when a great movie hits the screen, you show up, you stay glued, invested, part of the story. And without fans like you, there'd be no cinema magic, no shared moments. So head to Fandango.com to get tickets, stream, or rent or buy top movies and series. Fandango loves fans.
Refreshing wild cherry cola meets smooth cream. The treat you deserve. Pepsi Wild Cherry and Cream. Treat yourself.
Now, back to the show. What's next? We're working our way down the list here. I'm already just these first two is enough for a trip.
Yeah. Okay, so number 5 on the list is a place called Arica. So it's pretty much the northernmost city in Chile, and it is home to the world's oldest mummies, which is a fact that nobody knows. Everybody just assumes the Egyptian mummies are the oldest, and that is incorrect. These are about 2,000 years older than the Egyptian mummies. It's a group called the Chinchorro, who in the desert, things kind of are mummified anyway because there's just no water. But they actually established some sort of mummification techniques which kind of changed through the time period and became more complex, and they removed more bits of the internal organs, and it's just I personally wouldn't have wanted to do mummification, but it's interesting to see the results of it, right? Basically, this town has got 2 museums dedicated to the Chinchorro. So there's one in the foundations of what was a house, and they were trying to turn it into a hotel, and they dug it up and realized there's just a load of mummies in the sort of foundations, and ended up kind of putting over glass over the top of it. And now you can basically stand on the glass and just stare down at these mummies beneath your feet, which is really cool. They've also got this other museum that's a bit further out of town, and it is also dedicated to the mummies. There's a lot more information there about the different kind of mummification techniques. And there's also this room that you can kind of look into that has just got the mummies in basically what look like little beds. And that's exceptionally creepy, but just also really, really cool. And I think they're expanding the museum, so they might have some of them kind of actually a bit easier to see.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking at it online. Is it like a beach town?
Yeah, so it's not somewhere that I would go to for the beach. It's one of the towns in the north of Chile that has kind of faded since it was kind of big there used to be kind of nitrate towns. People would be kind of digging up nitrate. So it's not somewhere for the beach, but you've got these sort of mummies here. And also, if you go into the kind of interior of Chile to the border with Bolivia, you've got Lauca National Park, which often people will go to San Pedro de Atacama in the Atacama Desert. But Lauca has incredible volcanoes, incredible scenery. You've also got the kind of flamingos, you've got hot springs, you've got salt flats. And there's about 10 other people there in the place when you're there. And it's just an incredible alternative to San Pedro. So if people are going to that area, because it is a bit further away, you typically have to fly, or you can go to Iquique, which is a bit further south that people have heard of a bit more, where there's sort of sandboarding and paragliding. But I recommend going and seeing the mummies and then heading into the interior and just seeing this incredible scenery.
Super cool. Yeah. I mean, that's generally the case nowadays, right? Like you have to put in the effort to go a little bit further to get a bit more off the beaten path. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. But it's definitely worth it. And I think as well, the thing to be aware of is that you're at altitude. There's a town called Putre, which is basically the main place where people are based if they go up into the Altiplano. And that is kind of, I think it's about 3,200 or something like that. So going from sea level, you need to give yourself some time to acclimatize, and you'll be going up to sort of 4,000 or 5,000 meters sort of after that into the kind of Altiplano. So it's something to give yourself a good couple of days. I did it and gave myself altitude sickness because I was in too much of a rush and too eager, and had some other places I need to visit when I was researching the guidebook. But don't do what I did. Give yourself some time.
Take your time to acclimatize. Cool. All right. We're at number 4. I mean, wow, I love these bonus recommendations you're slipping in, Steph. Nice work.
This is what happens when you've got an encyclopedic knowledge of a country and very few opportunities to share it, except when you're writing.
I love it. We love it.
my friends don't want to hear about Chile on a daily basis.
Well, you're in the right place here. We want to hear about it.
That's good. Okay, so number 4 is a place called Lago Budi. Now, this is a real left field suggestion, but it is, I've been now twice. I was there sort of late last year, and I visited about 6 or 7 years ago as well. What people don't know about Chile is that Chile has a really big indigenous population. So you've got the Rapa Nui people on Easter Island, which is Rapa Nui is the official name. I don't like using Easter Island because that's the kind of colonizer name. Rapa Nui is the name of it. You've also got kind of different indigenous groups in the north. And then you've in the south, or sort of around kind of the lakes region again, you've got the Mapuche. Now, the Mapuche are fascinating because the Mapuche basically fought off the Inca invasion, and then fought off the Spanish invasion. Now, this is a really big deal. So, like, pretty much all of the other indigenous groups were wiped out by either the first, or sort of amalgamated into the Inca regime, or wiped out by the sort of Spanish colonization. So the Mapuche, like the fact that this culture, and there's still, I think, over 1 million Mapuche in Chile, and there's some in Argentina as well. The fact they still exist in itself is remarkable. Now, as with a lot of indigenous people around the world, their treatment by kind of the state hasn't been very positive. So they have historically been pretty closed to visitors because they live in kind of, a lot of them have moved to cities and stuff. But many still live in kind of self-sustainable communities. They grow their own crops. They kind of support the community. They do have interactions with sort of Chileans in general, because you kind of have to at this stage, but because of this sort of fierceness of sort of resistance, they've protected a lot of their culture. And in Lago Budi, you can basically go and visit some Mapuche communities who have opened their doors and are so keen to show people about their way of life. Like when I was there back in, I think it was October, like the people were so exceptionally welcoming. They were so proud and so keen to kind of rewrite the sort of narrative that, because in some parts of Chile, there is kind of independence sort of fighting against the government. And as a result, the Mapuche have blanket been kind of judged to kind of be terrorist in some cases, which is not the case. Like the majority of Mapuche people are they're sort of passive. They want to, they want independence, but they want to kind of get to that stage in a very non-violent way. So it's absolutely fascinating going and visiting their villages. You get the chance, like I sat down with one of the village kind of leaders who told us all about their kind of cosmovision, their sort of spiritual belief system, which is fascinating. You can also learn about the machis, which are basically their kind of healers. And what's really interesting is that they believe that dreams can help them cure illnesses. So they basically can dream up what is wrong with one of their patients. And they use all sorts of kind of rituals and things to kind of deal with these illnesses. And in Chile, in the areas where the Mapuche live, they actually have hospitals that are half run by Machi kind of spiritual Mapuche leaders and half run by kind of Western doctors, and they could do combined medicine, which in itself is just absolutely fascinating. You just get to learn so much about the culture. We also got to play this game called Palin, which is basically Mapuche hockey, field hockey, not ice hockey. Basically it just is hockey, but with big wooden sticks, like a really, really hard ball and no tooth guards. So the guys we were playing against hadn't got all of their teeth because I think they'd it was a bit scary actually. I would have preferred to have some sort of protection, but it was fantastic. It was like fascinating, and again, it was just such a brilliant kind of community sort of cultural exchange, which I think you get if you're looking to really learn about Chilean culture. This is such a unique place to go and learn about that side of Chilean culture that nobody really knows exists. And I think as well, like what really struck me when I visited there recently, they see themselves as kind of the sort of protectors of the environment. Like their whole culture is based around kind of living sustainably with Mother Earth. And listening to the Mapuche kind of people I spoke to, I watched two people cry because they were so desperate for us to be taking climate change seriously. And it just really hammered home, I think, particularly, Indigenous people have been described kind of the kind of protectors of the environment, right? Because a lot of around the world, you have a lot of Indigenous people who are sort of stewards of the natural world and manage to do a lot better at protecting it than sort of Western governments have been. So I think it was such a powerful experience of just being reminded that climate change is, we all know it's fundamentally terrifying, but like seeing the passion and the fear and them just saying we just need to be living more carefully with the earth was just incredibly moving as well.
Amazing.
Number 3
more, I guess. Yes.
Okay, so number 3 is a place called Tierra del Fuego, which is in Patagonia. It's an island that, again, is shared by Argentina and Chile. It's a kind of like booty bit at the bottom of South America. So it's sort of like a little lump at the bottom. Now, people often go to the Argentine side. There's a place called Ushuaia, which is where all the cruises to Antarctica leave. But the Chilean side, because there's only sort of one dusty kind of 4x4 road there, gets hardly any visitors. Now, I've been 3 times now. I'm very fortunate that I got to basically did a road trip. We wild camped on a couple of occasions there. The scenery is kind of all grasslands for the majority of the drive. And you basically start in the north and drive down south. But as you get closer to the south, you basically hit what are the Darwin Mountains, which are kind of the last bit of the Andes. And you hit these incredible valleys. There's a lot of like peat bog. You've got so much wildlife. You see a lot of guanaco. You see a lot of foxes, like so much bird life. You also see beavers, which are not native to the area, and were basically introduced, like Canadian beavers. They were introduced because local people thought that they would be, or a businessman thought they would be able to grow them like they do in Canada and then use their pelts. But unfortunately, the weather wasn't cold enough. So these beavers just never got really hard enough pelts. They released them, and now it's basically an epidemic in Tierra del Fuego. So they're not great. They're not good for the environment. And it is a real problem because they're damming things left, right, and center. But it is very cool to also see a beaver. But basically, you've got these beautiful lakes. We wild camped by this lake, and pretty much every night at like 5 p.m., this beaver would go past as the sun was setting. And I did this sort of 1 week with my ex-partner and some friends, and we saw it go past every night. And then the following week, I went down with my dad and my brother and a family friend, and we did a similar trip. We wild camped at the very same place. And as it was sort of the sun was going down, I said to them, I was like, there's a beaver's going to swim past in 5 minutes. And they were like, nah, that's not going to happen. And lo and behold, it did. And then I explained why. But anyway,
did you talk to him? Were you like, hey, beaver, cut it out. You're not supposed to be doing this. I mean, come on.
Well, I don't know. I think it was heading home. It had a busy day, like, chewing some wood, and was heading back to the lodge.
Funny. Like clockwork.
Pretty much, I guess. The time had changed slightly because the nights were getting longer and everything. But yeah, the whole area is just hardly any visitors there at all. And there's even you can go and visit some really remote glaciers. You can go drive basically to the end of the road. They're currently trying to create a road that goes all the way to the Beagle Channel, which is the sort of strait that Ushuaia is on. But that is still probably 10, 15 years off. Like they said it was going to be 10 years ago, and it still hasn't happened. When that does happen, the area is going to be flooded with visitors. So this is a time, go rent a 4-wheel drive from Punta Arenas, the southern Chilean city, and take yourself down there. And you can wild camp, but what I will say is that just be incredibly conscious of obviously the impact that you're leaving, because people are often making fires, and it can be incredibly dangerous, obviously, with the risk of wildfires and the sort of environmental impact in general. So, and there's also little lodges and stuff you can stay in that have their own kitchens. You can we stocked up with just a load of food and an inordinate amount of wine in Punta Arenas, and then sort of drove down and sort of stayed in a couple of little middle of the nowhere little cabins. But it's just so beautiful there.
That's great. Yeah. Thanks for the tip too on the road development. That's one of those things. It's really hard to research as a traveler, some of these areas where, there are these big developmental projects. And like you said, this is a great example. Once they finish, the area is going to be completely changed and more accessible. And so, if you want to experience it before that, get there soon. But those places, that's a hard thing to research, I feel. It's on the ground knowledge, or looking through a guidebook like you've made, or those places do, for me, create a little bit more urgency if you want to experience that before it turns into something else, I guess.
Yeah, and it's also somewhere that I was really resistant to write about.
You didn't want to bring more attention to it.
Yeah, and I wrote a piece for my website last year all about the kind of area. And I forgot to mention there's also a king penguin colony, and I'm a massive penguin lover, so that in itself is a real reason to visit. But it's somewhere that you have to be very sensitive and conscious of, like I said, of your impact, because there's very little infrastructure. There are people living there, and there's some incredible pioneers who moved there in the 60s and had to bring all of the materials for their buildings, for their houses, on horseback. It's just because the road didn't turn up until whenever, I think again the 90s. So it's just something that I don't want a flood of visitors to go. And I want the people who do go to just be aware that it is incredibly remote as well. We actually got our car broke down. So you have to be aware of kind of what could potentially happen whilst you're out there. But this is not a place for mass tourism. This is a place to just be really respectful of the nature and the people who live there, and just enjoy how incredibly beautiful. This is Patagonia. the Patagonia that everybody thinks, oh, Patagonia is empty and, you know, nobody's there and it's just wildlife. This is Patagonia like that.
This is Bruce Chatwin's Patagonia.
Exactly. So it's just beautiful.
Say hi to the beaver for us, by the way.
Yeah.
All right. Second to last, which is sort of the last, although you can recap the last two.
Yeah. So this is another one of my absolute favorites. It's a place called Chiloé. Now, it's an island. Like I said, when Chile starts getting skinny, Chiloé is basically the island that's off the coast there. It's a pretty big island. I think it's one of the biggest islands in South America. And again, this is somewhere that has such a unique culture, because a lot of Chilean culture, it feels very European, right? But Chiloé, and it's partly because they were, I think originally some of them were sort of part of the Mapuche kind of indigenous group. But
Chiloé Island is an island?
It is an island, yeah, Chiloé Island. And basically it's incredible seafaring culture. Like everybody, like most of the people who live there are fishermen. They'll like go and like pull up these massive mussels that you can go and eat. There's lots of like traditional markets where you can try curanto, which is basically kind of loads of shellfish, some like Chilean sausages, some chicken, potatoes, and the traditional form of cooking it is basically in a hole in the ground with like hot stones and then leaves piled on top, and it kind of just cooks it away for hours. I've never tried a real one, but I have tried it. You can basically get it that's made in like in just like a normal pot in one of the markets. But really, really traditional food. What the island is also known for is the palafitos, which are basically these fishermen dwellings on stilts, and they're brightly coloured. And the idea is they're kind of on the coast or sort of estuaries going into the towns. And basically the fishermen would go out, go fish, come home, come via the boat, park up the boat next to the house and just get out. So it's really, really cool. And a lot of them have been converted into hotels. But there's also some really cool viewpoints in Castro, which is the main town where you can go and see them. And it's also got UNESCO World Heritage churches. They were basically built for the Jesuits who were there, I think probably 1700s. And they're all brightly coloured. And then all of them were built without nails. So they were just built with like wood that would kind of slot together, which in itself is incredible. And they all look suspiciously like upside down boats because the locals knew how to build boats. They didn't know how to build churches. So it's quite a unique thing. And then you've got some incredible national parks as well, or parks in general. There's one called Tepehueco, and it's got really thick Valdivian temperate rainforest where you can see pudu, which is like the world's smallest deer. They're like really stocky little creatures. And then they've got incredible beaches as well. And there's like, honestly, the beaches are probably some of the most beautiful I've seen in my life. Just so remote, so windswept, sort of white and grey kind of sand beaches. But the whole island is just, and it's great for food as well, in addition to the curanto. It's just such an interesting place. That not many people go to, but it's one of my favorites.
Amazing. And number one, of course, where we kicked it off.
The Carretera Austral.
Yes. And points around and along, right?
Mm-hmm.
What a list. Thanks, Steph.
Yeah.
And I've got to remind everybody, of course, if you want to dive in, Moon Chile with Patagonia and Rapa Nui is the guidebook, tagline, volcanoes and glaciers, vineyards and beaches, wildlife watching. Sounds pretty epic to me. Let's say somebody's going during the high season or roughly around the edges of the high season, which is maybe not quite shoulder season anymore. But just trying to get a sense of like a mid-range budget type of situation where maybe sometimes you're staying in cheaper places, sometimes you're staying in nicer places. Obviously, it depends on what you do. I mean, one of the things that I experienced traveling around Patagonia was that, you're doing so much in nature, hiking and whatnot, that it can be very affordable because you're just outside exploring nature. And, you just need to bring some food with you or tent or whatever. But everybody's holidays obviously vary and activities they want to do and everything. I know this is an impossible sort of question to answer, but just to get a sense of like the range of prices that you'll find on exploring some of these regions?
Yeah, so Patagonia is by far the most expensive part of Chile. And what I will say, I don't know when you were last there, but a lot of the national parks are now, you're looking kind of $20 to go in. But places like Torres del Paine, which has been conspicuously absent in my list of hidden gems, because it's everybody kind of knows about Torres del Paine, that is now become a lot more expensive. And if you want to do any of the hikes, you've got the W, which is the 5-day trek that everybody's heard of, and the O, which is the kind of 9 or 10-day trek. You have to pre-book those in advance, and it's very expensive. So you're looking at least $500, if not $800, if you're paying. I mean, you can bring your own tent and just pay for campsites. That's the cheapest thing, and carry your food, which is what I've done. But if you want to have a tent set up for you, if you want to buy food whilst you're there, you're looking at, like I said, $500 to $800, if not more. Now, that's probably the most expensive thing that you can do in the region. But I mean, in terms of kind of hostel accommodation or B&Bs or kind of mid-range, you're sort of looking between kind of $40 a night up to about $150. You can spend all the way up to sort of $3,000 if you want to in Torres del Paine, but I think that's out of most people's budget, including mine. In terms of kind of flights are actually very affordable in Chile, because obviously I've mentioned places all the way across the country. Often you've got kind of low budget carriers. So you're looking at maybe $100, maybe $150 for flights, but they do go pretty quickly. So if you are planning on traveling, like we said, in kind of a higher season, you want to be booking those at least a couple of months in advance. And what I will say about Torres del Paine as well, they actually open campsite reservations they've already opened them. So they opened them in sort of early June, late May this year. And for December and January, some of the dates will already be booked up if you want to do those treks. So you need to get those booked ASAP. But yeah, beyond that, I mean, bus travel's pretty affordable. Food, you can sort of spend $10 to $30 depending on what you want to eat. Does that kind of answer the question? Do you want me to give the kind of a general budget?
That gives us a bit of a picture. Of course, people can go, you have your resources, stephdyson.com will link up to, and worldlyadventurer.com. And of course, the book will link up to as well. Last questions. Well, just two more, and then I'll let you go, I guess. Wondering what brought you back to England? Why back to England?
So I was living in Chile with my ex, who is Chilean, and I realized that I was forgetting how to speak English, which was quite a unique problem. Not to say that my Spanish is even that good, but like my brain was really struggling to remember English words. And as a writer, that was becoming increasingly problematic. And I missed the UK. It's a really weird thing. I never thought that I would end up, like I bought a house in the UK a couple of years ago, and I never did think that this would be where I sort of settled down. But I do think it can be really hard living in other countries and other cultures, however much you love them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues with my country, but I at least understand them. You know,
I can relate to that, living in a different country from where I grew up. Yeah, sure. It's not easy all the time.
So I think I came back, and now since then I've quite enjoyed having a base. And like I said, I think I was away from home 6 months last year. I've been away kind of 2 and a bit months already this year, and every year I'm back for at least a month or two in Chile and then sort of the wider region. And it's quite nice to kind of go back and really embrace that, and then come home and sort of remember English. So
yeah, nice. Going way back to the top, I just do want to give some love to the teachers out there. One of the most important professions that is also one of the most difficult in many ways. I always so appreciate the teachers at the school that my kids go to, and just like teachers that have impacted me. I don't know. I just wanted to share some love for teachers out there, because it's a tough job, but so important for society.
It's a tough job. And what I will say as well, that teachers, I don't know where it is where you live, but like at least in this country, they get so much holiday that actually, if you do love to travel, then it can be a really great career for that. I elements of me miss teaching. I did some teaching whilst I was volunteering as well, and I do love working with kids, but I really enjoyed. I'm so privileged to be able to do what I do now. So I have, like you said, a lot of love and a lot of respect for all the teachers who are doing things, because they're incredible.
Do you want to leave us with some final words of wisdom, best advice for either travel to this region, life advice, whatever? It's always nice to have a little last minute tidbit to send people off.
So what I will say is, I think a lot of people overlook Chile. I think Argentina people here have heard a lot more about, or it's much better at promoting itself, and that's Argentina all over. The Argentinians are very good at promoting themselves. The Chileans are not. People have heard about Peru and Machu Picchu. I guess people have gone to the Galapagos. I think people do hear about Patagonia, but what I love so much about Chile is that it's a place that doesn't realize quite how incredible it is. And that's the thing about its people as well. Like I said, they're very self-deprecating. They kind of don't really understand why people like me want to wax lyrical about their country. And I think that's part of why it's such a wonderful place to go to. And there's no ego there. It's just exceptional scenery, wonderful wildlife, incredible food, very welcoming, friendly, funny people. And you just go and you're like, wow, this place is just... I think you don't quite imagine, even with me talking about it, just how incredible it's going to be. And every traveler that I've helped who's kind of emailed me and told me how their trip went is always just like, wow, it completely surpassed all my expectations.
Amazing. We'll send you off on that. Thank you so much for your time, Steph. Congrats on the book and look forward to staying in touch.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me.
Cheers. There you have it. Thank you to Steph Dyson. Don't forget moontravelguides.com to pick up that book. I love a good guidebook, and this is a great one. And before I let you go, a couple things I mentioned at the top. First of all, don't forget, if you want to sign up for the newsletter, it's free, zerototravel.com/newsletter. You can sign up over there to keep in touch and get all of the new episodes right to your inbox, along with plenty of other travel recommendations. Plus, I want to talk about, well, first of all, let me tell you this crazy story. It's pretty short. I'll keep it short anyway. I went to Patagonia. I was there for almost 4 months exploring that region, basically having my dream summer, which is there. It was just winter in the U.S., but summer down there, and doing all these crazy outdoor adventures. And one of them was to raft the famous Futaleufú River, which I didn't really know was sort of famous at the time, but I'd heard about it. And just what a beautiful area, just for the experience of being on this incredible blue water, the mountains, all the nature around it. But I was there at a time where there were some storms, and the rapids were so strong that they were actually considering not taking us. It must have been at least class 4, probably class 5. And there had been an incident earlier in the day that was very sketchy. I think somebody almost died, and they were standing there debating. I remember the guides standing around debating if they should take us or not. They were doing it off to the side, but I could tell what they were doing, and we kind of caught wind of it. And in the end, they decided to take us, and we did all survive. But man, was it crazy and intense and scary. And I just remember even the looks on the guides' faces, because if you've been commercial whitewater rafting, the guides are like rock stars. You're almost some of the coolest people you'll ever meet. And they just always seem like they're in control no matter how crazy things are. But even their faces looked scared. I could see it. And it was so intense. And in fact, we found out later that they had stopped running trips for weeks, and we were basically the last ones to run the river until it settled down. And that was insane. It was awesome. And man, I'm just glad I survived. So yeah, good times, great adventures in Chile. Okay. I mentioned this at the top. I'm going to leave you with this quick thought and then a quote. Now, as you heard in the conversation today, we talked about it at the top. Steph sort of left her teaching career and took off for Latin America on a bit of a whim. And she did make kind of a big decision on a whim. And I looked up the definition of whim. Funny word, isn't it? W-H-I-M. Whim. Whim. Anyway, it's a noun, a sudden desire or change of mind, especially one that is unusual or unexplained. Unusual or unexplained, which is, of course, subjective. And we kind of know when we're doing something on a whim. We know when something is a bit unusual or unexplained. We kind of know that internally. And sometimes a whim is just what we need, right? Who knows when? We can never know when. But if you haven't done anything on a whim for a while, something bigger, I would say, something unusual or unexplained, a sudden desire or change of mind, I mean, let's embrace the whim today. We're going to embrace the whim. So there you go. I just wanted to leave you with that. And a quote using that word from Caroline Knapp, who said, "Solitude is a breeding ground for idiosyncrasy." And I relish that about it, the way it liberates whim. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Peace and love to you and yours. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by ZeroToTravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.